Now, I just want to start this week's episode of SmackDown Ups and Downs by saying I think Roman Reigns is one of the coolest wrestling characters in ages, because how many times in the past have we created a new bad guy, but they're trying to be all cool and too sweeting people? Roman Reigns don't want to be cool. Roman Reigns just wants to be the head of the table. And if you piss him off, he's probably going to murder you. But we do have that to talk about and so much more. So my name is Simon Miller. Welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling. And let's take this, the finger of power, and let's give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down for this week's WWE SmackDown. SmackDown this week did indeed start with a pretty damn moving tribute to Pat Patterson. I mean, all the wrestlers were at the top of the rampway. We did the 10-bell salute. Michael Cole was explaining why Pat Patterson was such a big deal. I thought it was just incredibly emotional. It doesn't get an up, it doesn't get a down because it was far too important. And yeah, I mean, if you ever wanted to know how important that man was to World Wrestling Entertainment, that's the World Wrestling Federation, it was right there up on the screen. Then Roman Reigns arrived and he just blew the place up. And when you blow the place up, you get it up. He was being interviewed by Kayla Braxton, who during her introduction did spend a lot of the time going, Roman Reigns, he's so great, he's done this, and he's done that. In fact, what hasn't Roman Reigns done? So you could just smell that something fishy was going on, and it turned out that it was, because Paul Heyman and Kayla Braxton had been working together on Talking Smack, so Heyman had gone out of his way to get her this opportunity, and according to Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the head of the table, oh, Roman Reigns, we love you. She wasn't doing a very good job because one, she asked whether he manipulated family members, and two, she said that she thinks he's a little bit scared of Kevin Owens. I mean, I was sweating here. I was like, Kayla, what the flub are you doing? I mean, all that was missing was her to look at him and go, oh, by the way, Roman, I also don't think you're the head of the table. And he would have just found a knife and he would have stabbed her right in the head. You could just see it in his face. Instead, he told Paul Heyman to take over, and he basically did what we do here on SmackDown Ups and Downs every week. He was just like, oh, Roman Reigns, you are the best ratings draw. Roman, I was like, oh, phew, everything's back to normal. And then Kevin Owens arrived. He was super mad as well because of everything that had happened last week, so he said to Roman Reigns, hey, Roman, I've got a great idea. That's not how Kevin Owens talked, but he was like, why don't we have a TLC match at the TLC pay-per-view? Because, of course, when you do have themed pay-per-view events, you have to work in that stipulation. Now, I do admit it would be 1,000 times better if we actually came up with a cool story to get here. But look, Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens are so good right now, I don't care. Reigns said that he would do this, mostly because if he had said no, we wouldn't have a main event for that show. And then Kevin Owens decided, why are we even waiting? We should fight right now. And do you know why Roman refused? Because there was a lady in the ring and he's a gentleman, even though that lady was the same person he had just verbally eviscerated about 2 minutes ago. This obviously annoyed Kevin Owens, but Roman Reigns was done and he walked off, including ignoring all of KO's barbs like, ha ha, you're not the head of the table. And honestly, this was a fire opening segment because I understand the characters and I understand the narrative. Why can't WWE just wrap this up into a little package and paste it all over their television? It was faboo. Roman and Jay were then seen backstage, and Jay was all wound up because during that fracas, he'd been shouting, I'll fight you, Kevin, I'll do whatever you wanted, whereas Reigns was really calm. And he just looked at Jay and he said, look, what you need to understand is that your actions have consequences. And once again, I had the fear, and I'd tell you, we were going to find out what those consequences were. Okay, it was then Natalya versus Bayley. Now, if I had scribbled out what had happened down on a piece of paper and showed it to you, you'd have gone, ha ha, that sounds absolute crap. But in execution, I actually thought it was kind of decent. Up. And what I mean by that is that Bayley lost. And given that Natalya recently hasn't been able to get a win to save her life, this was a little bit confusing. Imagine that was the stipulation too. Natalya, we're going to put you in a match, and if you can't win, we are going to kill you. You just be like, no, I'm not going to sign that piece of paper. The twist, though, is that Bianca Belair was on commentary, and her mere presence, her mere existence, distracted Bayley so much she wasn't able to get on a game. Thankfully, though, that wasn't because Belair started making noises or jumped up on the apron or made her entrance music play. No, she was at commentary. Bayley was like, I don't like the fact this person's at commentary. So eventually she got caught in the sharpshooter and she tapped out. What was I just saying about story? And that was even better because don't forget what happened last week. It was Bianca Belair versus Natalya with Bayley on commentary, but Bianca didn't let this perturb her and she was still able to get the win. So now I'm like, well, Bianca's so cool and Bayley, you a piece of trash. So we have a feud, everything makes sense. I don't understand why every now and then Natalya is allowed to win these big matches, but she must have some kind of dirt on someone. I look forward to finding out what that is. Even though that wouldn't work because then she wouldn't be in this opportunity anymore. It is very strange. Otherwise, good. WWE then aired a proper tribute video to Pat Patterson, and if you were able to get this without cutting onions, then you and I are very different people. And people are always going to say things like this because of hyperbole and how you feel at the time, but it may very well be the most emotional tribute video WWE has ever done, and once again just reminded you how important Pat Patterson was. To tie into this as well, quite nicely, we had kind of like an Intercontinental Tag Team title match because of course Pat Patterson was the first ever Intercontinental Champion. We had the original championship belt and we just had 6 dudes wrestling their ass off. It was so entertaining, it was so fun. And it was Sami Zayn, Dolph Ziggler and Shinsuke Nakamura taking on Big E, Daniel Bryan and Rey Mysterio, and we don't even need to talk about this. If you enjoy very enjoyable, as you would enjoy enjoyable 6-man tag team matches, just sit down, think of Pat Patterson the whole time, and you will be sports entertained. Especially if you watch this show, because do you know how it ended? With the most devastating move in all of sports, ended the surprise roll-up when Daniel Bryan snuck in and he did that to Sami Zayn. But we're not going to bring down the board. There's no point. It's a move that Pat Patterson used to do a lot back down the day. There's always exception to the rule, and this is it. If you want to be really cheesy, you could say, oh, it's everything that Pat would have wanted, and that was especially true after the fact because the good guys beat the bad guys up. Dolph Ziggler tried to get away, but because he was being a coward, everybody hit their big finishing move. This made me feel all warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. We then just had the oddest skit with Kevin Owens backstage. I mean, maybe this tied into something, and I'm a buffoon. But Kayla Braxton was saying, hey, Kevin Owens, are you going to beat up Roman Reigns? He's like, oh, I'm going to beat him up so bad. When Kalisto came through the door wearing a fedora. And Kevin was like, hey, you know that we're live? And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And Kevin said, that's all right. I like your fedora. And Kalisto said, what's the fedora? And Kevin Owens said, that's your hat. And Kalisto went, thanks. And he left. I mean, I felt like I'd injected a bunch of drugs into my face. What's that? I mean, I missed something. Clearly I've missed something, but I am a bald idiot. Otis then arrived, and he was like, you know, Kevin, I don't really trust you because you turn on all your partners, but let's forget about that for now, and tonight we're gonna smash some people up. If only he knew what he would know now, he ain't smashing up nothing. And now it's negativity time. I do apologize, but all this stuff with Sasha Banks and Carmella, I just don't really get it. They were doing one of those dual interviews where they're on each side of the screen, but they're in different rooms because last week they had a fight. And the story we are being told here is that Sasha Banks was always the big dreamer who was desperate to become a WWE superstar, and Carmella tripped up and fell into the performance center, but she was such a natural, she ascended Sasha quicker than Sasha got to the top. But if you actually go through both their careers, none of that is true. More logic then went out of the window because Carmella was talking about how she had been Miss Money in the Bank, and Sasha said, yeah, but you didn't even win that by yourself. So I suppose I meant to think that Carmella's nuts and she's got this warped vision of herself in her brain, but I didn't think that. I just sat there and questioned, why are we even going to have this title match, which of course we are going to do at TLC. It just feels like a heel turn for the sake of a heel turn, and that never works because there's no depth here. So if you're trying to swim through it, you can't. You're just lying on a pavement, wiggling your hands around. And when you do that, the police are definitely going to arrest you. Then did when Carmella snapped her fingers and her side of the interview just went dark, so I guess she has Bray Wyatt Fiend-esque powers. And I didn't actually think either person was quite likable. That was the other thing. I was like, well, you can kick each other's ass for all I care. This one is not for old Simon Miller. But if it is for you, remember, you win, you watch it to have fun, and this gave you a little bit of fun. Baron Corbin then made good on his promise last week because he had gone out there and he had got some help. I really quite like this up. It was none other than Steve Cutler and Wesley Blake, who you may remember as the Forgotten Sons before they were forgotten after some problems on social media. We're not going to talk about it here. Now, this was slightly frustrating because straight away I went, it's those two guys, but Michael Cole and Corey Graves acted like they had come from the moon sometimes you do have to give your audience a little bit of credit. But I really do think we may be onto something, because they were dressed kind of cool, like they had suits, but they're also wearing hoodies. But they are clearly the henchmen that are going to back Baron Corbin up after last week he got screwed over by the Mysterios. But please, WWE, let us double down on this. Let it grow, let Baron have a really good explanation, and also start selling the end of days like one of the best finishing moves in all of WWE, because that's what it is. What I don't want is to get 3 weeks down the line and this just to go poof and vanish, which we do a lot. I think we're onto something. And Baron was obviously getting his rematch against Murphy, because again, last week he had been totally screwed, but he had a plan this time, because when Dominic and Ray were doing it again, and honestly, they are the biggest heels in the business, Baron said to his guys, sort this out. They did, and when Murphy turned around, ba-boom, he got smashed with the end of days 1, 2, 3, so straight away, Baron Corbin's decisions are already paying off. Given these new cronies are wearing suits too, let's also get Baron away from all the King stuff as quickly as they can, and let's evolve all of this. I do have to say, the story is absolutely bonkers, because I was sat there going, yeah, get him, Baron, screw him up, because Dominic, Rey Mysterio, and his entire clan are just such assholes. But look, if it gets us to this and gets us something new, I'm alright with this. Street Profits were then in the back doing their usual Street Profits thing, and they got interrupted by Dolph Ziggler and Cesaro, who each wanted their respective teams to have a tag team title shot. And I've now decided to fly to Florida, and I'm just going to go hang out backstage at WWE, because at one point I get my opportunity to go, can I have a title match? And the other person will say yes, because this is how we set up all championship feuds. And then it was our main event, and flub me, it was so good. I mean, it is such an easy up. It is a massive up. It was Roman Reigns and Jey Uso taking on Otis and Kevin Owens, and of course at first, Roman Reigns didn't show up. He has a tendency to do that. But I was like, oh, these are the consequences that Jey Uso have to pay. I'm sure when he does get here, they'll be the best of friends. No. It did mean that Jey Uso was left all alone. In terms of the wrestling rule book, you don't usually do that with a heel, so otherwise the good guys have a 2-on-1 advantage, but I don't think that Jey Uso is being portrayed as a bad guy. In fact, he still has a lot of sympathetic qualities. He is being absolutely manipulated by his big bad cousin, which is why all of this worked, at least for me. Of course, as soon as there was any bother, out came Roman to try and calm down the situation, and we also learned that he does not like comedy characters, because he went after Otis, and honestly, I know I've talked about it a lot, but he killed him. There was a murder right in front of my eyes. He was throwing him around. He used the still steps around about 47,941 times. It was an absolute mugging. Why the hell nobody came out to help him, I have no idea. And the only disappointing thing is that even though this was happening between two official competitors within the match, because they weren't the legal man, there was no disqualification. And Corey Graves was like, well, that's why. Neither are the legal man. I'm like, that is baloney. One, not only is that baloney if you step back into reality, but two, it's baloney in the world of kayfabe, because I have seen referees call disqualifications for this very thing. So we can't let him get away with it. It's getting it down. It is not a big deal though, because Roman Reigns is just so good. Given that they now had the 2-on-1 advantage, they were about to win, and Jey Uso climbed the top rope, but Reigns was like, no, come over here, tag me in. It's my show. I'm the tribal chief. I'm the head of the table, and I'm gonna finish this off. And so disappointingly, Jey Uso wasn't able to do it. Kevin Owens started to fight, and Roman got mad. Because Reigns just busted in the ring and tried to murder another human being, this one entitled Kevin Owens. And this is when that earlier no DQ became even dumber, because now the ref was like, well, I'm gonna give this one a disqualification, and nobody has any idea why. Other than maybe the fact that he was choking Kevin Owens, and let's face it, Roman Reigns probably would have seen that through to the end. It is not important though, because this then allowed Roman and Jey to just annihilate Kevin Owens with chairs. I can't even count how many times they hit him, and Roman even made Jey go to the top and hit Kevin Owens with a splash as a chair laid prone over KO. And that was like punishment for Jey. He sold it like he was hurt. Unfortunately, it was here that we found out what these consequences were, because as Jey Uso was laying on the floor going, I'm in so much pain, Reigns got another chair. You've never seen anything like it. You've never seen anything. He beat the hell out of his cousin like he owed him money. He then got in Kevin Owens' face and just yelled at him like he was the biggest idiot ever. And if you went at home going, oh, Roman Reigns, you're our tribal chief, you're in a lot of trouble. Because Roman's going to hear about this. He's gonna knock on your door, and he 100% is gonna shoot you right in the face. For some reason, too, Roman now thinks that it's Kevin Owens' fault that his family is being divided, even though it's like, no, Roman, you are responsible for all of this. And like I said at the start of this video, he is just the coolest character on TV. He has so much to him, is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, and even though it is a little bit contrived how we're getting the TLC match, I, as a wrestling fan, am very, very excited. Also, imagine when he loses that title, not only are you going to make the other guy, but he may actually just, I don't know, get a bomb and blow the whole place up. So once again, the best thing about SmackDown is our main event scene, which should always be the way, but I'm also very intrigued about this Baron Corbin stuff. I'm going to keep my eye on it. So overall, once again, they are on a roll. Is getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of SmackDown. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. If Roman Reigns is watching, you my man, dog, big dog, whatever you want me to say, just write down a piece of paper. I'll be better than Caleb Braxton. I'll read it verbatim. I like being alive. See ya.